You're watching Let the Quran Speak. How is it that some young Muslims living in the West get caught up in violence and crime? The Toronto Star recently reported on Toronto Mayor Rob Ford's alleged drug use. Many of the individuals mixed up in the story have Muslim-sounding names, including one 23-year-old man who recently pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Why do some Muslims find themselves drawn into a life of crime? With me to discuss, Dr. Shabir Ali, President of the Islamic Information Center. Brother Shabir, what's going on here? We know that Islam says that you should live a morally upright life. At the same time, we are seeing that there are many young Muslims in the West who are living lives of crime. So what's going on?
Many young Muslims in the West, in fact, turn away from Muslim traditions. They do not follow the way of their parents, and they want to enjoy life as they see many of their peers enjoying life, and they think that enjoyment is with having fun in the way that they see their peers having fun. And sometimes this means for them joining gangs, turning to crime, which for them might imply easy money. And sometimes they get into the use of drugs and gambling and so on. So this, of course, has nothing to do with the Islamic faith, and it's all contrary to the Islamic faith. And the real question then should be, how do we keep our youth enthused about the religion of Islam so that they do not turn away from Islam or neglect the Islamic beliefs and practices on the whole, and that they do not turn into, worse than this, into a life of crime.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there might be external reasons for going into a life of crime? For example, poverty, racism, perhaps?
Yes, these are factors, poverty, racism. There is also the identity crisis that many young Muslims go through if they are trying to find themselves, and they're growing up in Muslim homes and they don't understand the religion and culture of their parents, and they're trying to fit in with the religion and culture of the land, or most of the culture of their peers. So trying to find themselves, they lose themselves.
Mm-hmm. But I guess that wouldn't be a reason for them to be criminals.
Absolutely not. There's no excuse for anyone to be criminals. In fact, the religion of Islam is expected to cultivate the youth who would be enthusiastic about life, who would be ambitious in their outlook, who would pursue things like education and have the dream of the pursuit of happiness by obtaining a reasonable job. All of this is within the purview of the Islamic thinking. Islam is not only about praying and fasting and going to heaven, but it's also about living a wholesome life in this world as a way of going to heaven.
Mm-hmm. Islam is also about pursuing excellence, right? Being the best that you can be in whatever field that you're in. Can you expand a little bit on that idea?
Absolutely. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have specifically instructed us that whatever we do, we should do it well. We should do it with excellence and with perfection. So the striving for excellence is not a new idea. This is as old as Islam itself. Muslims then should try in whatever they do to be the best, try to be the top of the class, not in a competitive way, such as to demean others in your rise to greatness, but to help other people to do well. And in helping other people to do well, you end up doing better yourself, because you develop the skills, you develop the know-how. In trying to coach others, you actually indirectly coach yourself. Muslims should be in that position. They should work hard on things and take things seriously. This is one of the lessons we learn from the month of Ramadan, that sometimes in order to excel, you have to put in some extra effort, make some sacrifice, and give up sport and play for a while.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes Muslims fall into degenerate lives because they've given up hope. What sort of advice do you have in that case?
Well, our belief system is such that we have hope in God who is ever alive. Things may come and go. Happiness may not be lasting. But God is everlasting, and with Him we will find everlasting happiness in the life hereafter. All we have to do is live a life that is pleasing to Him, and living this life that is pleasing to Him means a holistic approach to life. I mentioned giving up sport and play, but I didn't mean permanently. I mean, for the purpose of focusing on some more important tasks at the required time. Otherwise, sport and play is also a part of the Islamic purview. If one is applying oneself to healthy sports, participating so that one develops a healthy body and a clear mind, then all of this is actually rewarding from the religious perspective. One can be playing sport and still getting reward from God for doing that. Some people may find this unusual to be said in this way, but it is related that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, spoke about intimate conjugal relations, he spoke about this as being rewarding with God, and his companions asked, do we get rewarded while we are fulfilling our desires? And he said, yes. Do you not see that had you done this in an unlawful manner, you would have been punished for it? So the opposite is also true, that when you do it, when you do things in a way that is within the law of God, you actually get reward for it. So those sports which promote healthy bodies and clear up the mind and get us ready again to work and be more productive, these two, applying ourselves to them in a reasonable manner, brings us a reward from God.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do people avoid falling into the wrong crowd? Because once you do so, sometimes it's very difficult to extricate yourself.
And don't start. I think you got it right, because it's going to be so very difficult to extricate yourself, and most people will regret having taken that step and entered into the wrong crowd. In the 25th chapter of the Quran, Muslims are warned that on the Day of Judgment, many will regret the friends that they have taken. And they will say, oh, woe is me this day. I wish I had not taken such a one for a friend, because such a person has misled me and taken me away from the right path. One should choose friends who will help us to be excellent and to bring out the best in us, and friends whom we can also help to bring out the excellence in them, so that we feed off the energy of each other. We have to have life goals and think about specifically the things that are possible for us to achieve. Canada is a great land of opportunity. If we want a better job, there is a system, there is a roadmap that one can follow. There are courses that one can take, professional skills one can develop, and then one can apply for those jobs. Sure, there are difficulties. You mentioned poverty and racism. And some Muslims suffer from both of this. We didn't say much about racism, but this is something. Our Canada is great for multiculturalism, and we promote the idea of accepting people as they are, appreciating the diversity of persons we will encounter. Yet, sometimes there is a subtle racism that comes out at the critical moment when somebody is to be hired for a job. So if you happen to be a Muslim, or you happen to be Arab, or you happen to be both Muslim and Arab, or you happen to be a Muslim and Arab and a woman wearing a hijab, well then, your chances of getting certain jobs just simply become minimized. But we have to recognize the difficulties we face and take that for granted and rise above that, because we cannot just simply quarrel at the darkness. We just have to turn on the light. And Muslims sometimes need to work a little bit harder to get that extra education, to take that additional course, so that our application looks better from other perspectives. And at the same time, Muslim scholars prescribing what Islam is to be followed by the youth have to relax some of the regulations where these are possible to be relaxed, which means that we need to go back to our history and look at interpretive forks in the road when decisions were being made by scholars interpreting certain texts, and when they could have chosen a difficult path or an easy one, and they chose the difficult one, and they prescribed that as a rule. So if the Book of God said something and it's not clearly something difficult, and the Muslim scholars prescribed it as something difficult, we need to go back to that fork in the road and say, let's stick with the Book of God, which made the religion easy for Muslims to follow, And let's revise some of those interpretations which make the religion impractical to be followed, especially in a new land where Muslims find themselves as immigrant in a new country, and they're struggling to make themselves fit within the landscape.
Mm-hmm. One last question. What is your advice for an individual who has already perhaps committed a crime, perhaps is already in the system, the police system? How would you advise them as to how to turn their life around?
Well, anyone can turn his or her life around. We see in Islamic history there were people like Omar, who became the second caliph of Islam, was shown to be in Islamic history a very rough person prior to his becoming a Muslim, and that he committed some crimes for which he would later on continue to weep. But that was Umar. He rose to become the second caliph of Islam. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari is known to have come from a group of people who were prominent as highway robbers. Mm-hmm. And when he embraced Islam, people were surprised. This was Abu Dharr, one of the people of those, one of those highway robbers. Mm-hmm. Maybe not himself a highway robber, but nevertheless he came from such an environment. But he could have changed his life around. And the examples are numerous. Anyone can take control of his life. This is the basic message of Islam, that we are responsible for our own situation. We cannot show up on the Day of Judgment and say the devil made me do it, because even the devil is going to disown people who say that. It's going to say, I only gave them the thought and then they acted upon it. So we act on devilish inspiration. Our friends give us our peers give us some bad ideas and then we act on it. We cannot say, our friends made us do this. Sometimes parents say it's the friends that made my good kid do that. Mm-hmm. Well, no, friends do not make your good kid do that. Your good kid decided to do that after hearing the suggestions of his friends. Or he got influenced and allowed himself to be influenced. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be influenced negatively like that.
All right, very nicely put, Brother Shabir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we'll answer questions we've received from you, our viewers.